Good morning and welcome to the third Kentucky Summit, a statewide strategy for Riverport investment. On behalf of the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and the Kentucky Riverports Highway and Rail Freight Study, I'd like to welcome each of you to this morning's session. I'll give everybody about a minute to go ahead and get finished signing in. We have participants that are still signing in and getting situated, so we'll give you one more minute to get all signed in. So. All right, it looks like people have gotten in, and we'll just the rest as they come in. We'll just go ahead and get started and get this underway. Again, I'd like to welcome each of you this morning to the third Kentucky Summit, the statewide strategy for Riverport investment, and this is part of the Kentucky Riverports Highway and Rail Freight Study. It's the last summit of the study that we've had 3 total, and this is the last day of the summit, so let's make the best of it as we can. And by doing that, first of all, I'd like to go through some housekeeping items. So if you can see on my screen or on your screen, there's the mute button on the far left, the chat button in the middle, which we'd like you to use for asking questions while the presenters are presenting or at the end during Q&A sessions. There's the reaction buttons, which you can use to raise your hand, or if you'd like, turn on your screen by hitting the video camera on, and that also kind of alerts us that you would like to say something or you would like to speak. If you have trouble seeing something, try using your change view button to see if you can change the view of the gallery, the people speaking, or the presentations that are on the screen. So with that being said, the 6th session. Today is Thursday, September 2nd, and this is going from 9:30 to 11. Some of the sessions have been going the full time, and some of them, we'll give you back 15 minutes to a half hour, depending on how the sessions, the amount of time they take up. But we didn't want people to be running at the end of the schedule, so we gave some extra time as we planned this last summit. Today, in this session on economic development and advancing the state's riverports, we have Mimi Razor with Razor Communications, and we also have Kevin Johns with Metro Analytics as one of our technical leads. And the agenda is to have an overview on the marketing toolkit and the next steps, and then also to have a recommended economic development strategy session from Kevin. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mimi, and just give me a second as I transition over to her slides.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy. It's a pleasure to be with everyone here today. And we've really enjoyed our work with the study team, looking at the economic opportunities for the Riverports. And we're going to talk in just a moment about the marketing toolkit. So our team is putting together the marketing toolkit, which was always a part of this study. And the goal overall is to gather data and information that's prepared as a result of the study and provide content and materials to the port directors that can aid in building awareness and educating potential clients of your capabilities and services. So before I dive into exactly what's included in the marketing toolkit, I want to, if you go to the next slide, Jimmy, just take a moment to take a step back and look at a 20,000-foot view. And I'm going to talk about, you can go ahead and go through the animations there, Jimmy. This is the adoption process. And I wanted to just sort of level set on when we talk about marketing, what that means and what we're actually talking about, so we're all on the same page. This adoption model is based on communication theory, and that it says that before anyone can become a loyal user or adopter of any product or service, they have to go through 5 phases: awareness, interest, trial, evaluation, and adoption. And that may seem logical, and it kind of is, but I wanted to walk through this for a second just so that everybody understands why we've recommended the things we have for the marketing toolkit. So the first phase of this is awareness. Obviously, before anyone can buy your product or service, they have to be aware you exist. Then you need to give them a compelling reason to be interested in trying your product or service. Once they try it, they're going to evaluate it and decide, has this been a positive experience or not? And if it has been, then they may become a loyal user and adopt your product or service for the long term. And they may tell colleagues and friends and family about it. So marketing can influence the first 3 phases of this adoption process. They can take you from awareness, or take your potential customers from awareness through interest through trial. Once it gets to trial, then the baton is handed off to operations. So your operations need to be evaluated positively in order for that customer to become a long-term or repeat customer. So all of this to say that as we have looked at the Riverports and understood where you all are, really what we wanted to do was to provide a foundation for all of you, so that that awareness and education in this first phase of the process, we can get you on even playing field and kind of get you started in this space, understanding everything that we've learned through the study, to help everyone understand and be educated on what you do and the services that you provide. Some of you are at varying levels of development, as we've learned through the process of this summit. And also some of you overlap in market areas, so you compete sometimes, though I know we're trying to promote some more collaboration and figure out how you can work together and leverage your strengths to support the whole network. So at any rate, I just wanted to set the stage here before we go into the pieces that we have started to develop and why. Next slide. So the marketing toolkit, the primary components of that are going to be the Riverport profiles, which I'll go into more detail in a moment. We're going to update website content for the KAR website. Today, your front door, everyone's front door, is online. So we need to make sure that everything that is on your KAR website is current and updated and has the latest information, and give some of those compelling reasons for why potential customers would want to look at shipping freight by water. Updated website content and linkage from the KYTC and Economic Development Cabinet pages. So those websites obviously have a lot of credibility in terms of search and are frequently visited. So we want to make sure that the information that's presented on those says the information that we want about the Riverports and links back to the KAR site. And then we're going to outline the next steps in determining an appropriate go-to-market strategy for each Riverport. So as I mentioned before, each of the Riverports are at different levels of development. You have different capabilities and strengths. So we can't just write a one-size-fits-all marketing plan for all of you. So what we're going to do as part of the toolkit is to give each of you sort of the steps to walk through to determine how is it best for you to go to market to promote what you offer in terms of freight transport. So we'll be putting together that overall kind of guide to help you step through that process and figure out how you should go to market. And then we'll have some recommendations for future collateral materials. So for example, you may want to have a video that highlights the network as a whole that could promote everything that the network of Riverports can do. Next slide. So the Riverport profiles, this is one place we wanted to start because we think this gives each of the Riverports that one-pager fact sheet that has the latest information from the study and gives everyone, a potential customer, an overview of what you do. So this is an example from Henderson County, and all of the port directors should have received a draft of their own port profiles at this point. So you can see on the left is the front page, the right is the back. We have key features included there, which we have gleaned from both the study as well as things the port directors told us specifically that they talk about with potential customers. We have then the commodity growth forecast within the draw area. We have accessibility for the different modes of transportation available, a map of each of the river ports, which highlights specific amenities and capabilities of the ports, as well as customers who are on site at the ports. And then on the back page, we have the cargo movements by mode across the hinterland, inbound, outbound, and through barge, rail, and truck cargo. Then you'll see if that port is planning infrastructure investment, we have those outlined there. And then the freight forecast scenarios and top commodities there at the bottom, as well as a description on the left side of the port facility itself. So this is, again, trying to give all of you, at least that, all of the river ports, that first initial, if you want to know who we are and what we do, here's my one pager that can tell you that. This can live online, it can be printed. So there are a variety of uses for this, and we'll make sure that you have the capability to update those as well as they change over the years. So any questions about any of that information at this point?
And feel free to put it in the chat or unmute your mic, and you guys can right now ask Mimi or Haley any questions that you have related to what she's presented. Now's a good opportunity to chat with her about it.
And we can also come back at the end after Kevin's presentation as well. And, you know, we'll still be here obviously and can answer questions then as well. So that's what I have to present, and I will turn it over to Kevin to take it away on economic development strategies.
Thank you, Mimi. I think that's an excellent snapshot of where the ports can be and how they can look at their own future and how they can market themselves in this very competitive climate that we're in. Hey, good morning, everybody. I wanted to just start up by saying that I've told some of you that when my son was 4 years old and wouldn't sleep at night, I would say, Judd, I'm going to talk to you about economic development policy and business intelligence and city planning, and he would immediately go to sleep. So I'll try and speak more in the terms of a layman, but I think that this is a valuable addition to the applications that you're going to be submitting to the federal government for funding, that you're going to use in your marketing strategy. So what I'm going to do in terms of discussing the implementation, some policy suggestions, is you've already got the business intelligence, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what the outlook from the federal government is, and I'm going to hypothetically describe how you might successfully attract $220 million to modernize the Kentucky Riverport system, which of course addresses state and federal goals. But I'm going to do this in a way that I'm going to provide some research, some suggested partners, a strategy, but I'm going to do this through a toolkit of questions, of 5 questions that I hope that you'll be able to talk to your board of directors, local elected officials about, that'll allow you to expand your thinking on how to compete, on how to develop public-private partnerships. And then I think some of that information can be customized and drawn into the marketing piece that distinguishes each one of the ports and shows new ideas and new creativity that contributes to the whole. So anyway, that's my quick introduction in a layman's term. So the reason I said it was going to be in a layman's term is because I put a lot of narrative here, but I'm going to go ahead and we'll send you this. I'll still just speak through it. But there are links and information in the PowerPoint that I think will be of value. So hypothetically, I have picked a number of $220 million that the entire port system would need. It's not totally hypothetically designed. The business intelligence, the visit to the ports, identified almost $200 million in needs, something like $53 million in real estate needs, but there's equipment, there's multimodal facilities, there's a lot of things that are needed to modernize the port. So if you wanted to successfully apply for $220 million of federal funds from the new $17 billion port allocation package, or the $8.9 billion raise, which used to be the Tiger funds, or the $3 billion EDA funds, how would you do that? Well, you know, some ports do it individually, some do it as a state. And I think that the first observation from looking at both the federal level and the state, and the last year of the teamwork between transportation and economic development cabinets in Kentucky, and the participation of the education cabinet and the agricultural cabinet, is that it might be beneficial to all the ports that the agencies combine in an application to the federal government for large sums of money, is a mechanism to future-proof the state, to look at it as we're all working together as a team, we're all addressing national priorities, state priorities, and we've got a return on investment case. This is how we're going to raise the 20% to 50% matching dollars. I think that's very, very important, because the competition is going to be very intense. Everybody's seen what happened in Louisiana, and although the port infrastructure there seems to have held very well, and the $15 billion that was invested there seems to have made it survive, they're going to go back and still do a lot of retrofitting. And then you see what happens in New York. So I'm going to suggest that part of the framework for applying for federal dollars be a compelling case of return on investment, teamwork, equity, and public-private partnerships, and done in a way that distinguishes it from other state applications. Now, you know how it's been done traditionally. It's not happening that way anymore. At least it doesn't seem to be. The mantra of DOT and EDA is that money loves company and equity is the priority. And so I've listed this first link, which is one from DOT on how they're going to be looking at and evaluating applications. But in summary, I think the best policy framework is one that is equitable and economically powerful. What I'm saying here is that poverty should not be a dirty word. Dealing with equity should not be looked at as an additional burden, but as a potential revenue generator. It's morally the right thing to do. I think everybody agrees. But if you can take that talent pool and you can turn it into a tax generating system of taking this underutilized asset, and do that by partnerships with the city government, which also benefits, then you leverage the infrastructure dollars, you foster equity, you create workforce innovations. And I'm suggesting Einstein projects, not just creating blue collar jobs, but creating entrepreneurship in and around the ports, and foster the expansion of the cluster industries like logistics and technology and sensors that have been described in the business intelligence. Pool resources with the local governments. Let's show them that these are options to the loss of coal. Apply smart tech to each one of the areas, and advertise for public-private partnerships with the private sector to speed up the development. By doing that, I think you will have a compelling case that Kentucky's initiative is superior to others in applying for these funds and in retrofitting the entire port system as a force for the local economies, but also for the state and national economy. It's a value added impact team is what I'm suggesting. Jimmy, you can move that on. I've tortured them enough. So before I get into discussing the questions, this toolkit of questions, which I think are critical to you developing the kind of resources and teamwork that you need, let's quickly look at the infrastructure plan, what's in and what's out. This is a New York Times article that just came out a couple of weeks ago. And it discusses, there's a link, you could look at that on your own later, of course, but this is not the $2 trillion plan, the $2.6 trillion plan, it's the $1 trillion plan. And only 550 billion, I mean, that's a huge amount. That's as much as the whole federal highway system in the past, but the rest of it is all for existing funds. So you've got two pools. You've got applying for the money that you used to get with the new equity requirements and the new public-private requirements and the new ROI requirements and the new requirements to focus on addressing poverty and kids and employment. But you have to compete then for the balance of it. And so again, the target areas, really need to be the $17 billion for ports and waterways. So there's just some examples I'm going to quickly walk through before we talk about the toolkit of where the money is and what their priorities are. So Jimmy, just go ahead and flash forward, please. So everybody on the call, I'm sure, is familiar with Tiger grants. And I don't remember what the Tiger grant acronym was, but I know it was transportation. The T was transportation. But the grants have become RAISE grants, and the E is for equity. And to the point that they changed the name, it's not without substance. There is a huge focus on equity in America. And here's two quotes. This first one is from EPA Administrator Michael Reagan. He says, a new federal framework for ensuring racial equity will guide the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure plan. And then if you look at the two quotes down below, the Secretary of EPA says this is an environmental justice. We're going to fund areas that have been marginalized in large government projects. We've set up a framework called Justice 40, and that's where 40% of our money on energy and clean energy investments, things that are prioritized in the government. I want to point that out because in that first quote and in this discussion, remember that the most of the Kentucky ports have inner city neighborhoods or some low-income neighborhoods that are clustered around the ports. And so this is an opportunity to partner with those communities. It's an opportunity also to score points. So there's a moral reason, but there's also a financial reason to be aware of the emphasis on this and how real it is. On the other side of it, the third line down, the radicalized equity agenda in Biden's infrastructure plan, also done last month in the National Review, tells you that it is really targeted. So there's going to be a lot of scrutiny that the grants that come forward are real, that this is not out of the box thinking, that this is in the box from now on, that we're using, in this case, the port system to not only improve cargo and the movement of commerce, but also to respectfully improve the prosperity of the communities where the ports sit. So that's kind of just wanted to touch on the Tiger grants because then that's been such a pipeline of resources. Go to EDA. Jimmy, go to EDA. Okay, so Everybody who does economic development and develops industrial parks or office parks or spec buildings, or does economic regional plans, or does anything that where there's a blend of transportation and economic development, uses these dollars. And these are their top 3 priorities now: equity, recovery and resiliency, and workforce. So those are their top 3 priorities, and you want to score very well on those, but you want to do it in a meaningful way. Go to the next slide, please. So they've got $3 billion available. These are their 4 programs. And when you look at each one of them, there's some element that is, is part of the catalytic energy of the ports. Of course, it's the cluster industries that the business intelligence speaks about that will benefit the ports, the different trade areas. But they are looking at the infrastructure, innovation, entrepreneurship, workforce development, and access to capital as a mechanism towards helping communities who are called coal communities. So obviously everybody on the call is aware of these funds and how it is being designed for our ports and our communities. And I say that as a Kentuckian, but I think also it's important that we create a compelling case, an argument that we're not only aware of it, but we're not just filling in the blanks. We're saying, no, we've got an entrepreneurship, a skill training program. We're dealing with this historically underserved population smartly, and we're going to leverage the infrastructure, the hundreds of millions of dollars infrastructure that you're hopefully going to give us, so that we'll have a measurable performance-based impact that will go for decades to meet federal requirements, the national and the state goal of becoming a more innovative state. You can go to the next slide, but I think that just gives you a perspective of where the evaluations are going to land. Now, if you're thinking, okay, these new requirements, these new priorities are things that we really haven't done before. We're aware of them and we care about them, but our priority for the ports has been, making the ports function and moving cargo. And when one area of the economy melts down, replacing it with something totally new. Now you're asking us to demonstrate competitively that we are doing things like connecting the economy to education. And how does the port do that? Well, in the first bullet, the team ports with cities, counties, and CEOs, I'm suggesting that the port encourage the cities and counties to provide property tax incentives to companies that do business with the ports, but also to provide incentives to the companies that tutor children in poverty for high-paying careers in the logistics industry and port management in any of the cluster industries that are supported by the business intelligence. That way you grow a talent pool that benefits the cities because their tax base does not have to cover the cost of so many people in poverty, because you've cut off the flow of youth into poverty. But also it creates a talent pool that that can be used to market for the port's economic strategy. That you can say, we've got, in Mimi's case, you've got not only these infrastructure pieces and this efficiency and these robotics and this location, but we've also got an incredible talent pool that is blue collar, white collar, entrepreneurial management, so that it's a draw to the whole economy, but certainly for the succession system and the expansion of the ports. The second area, and so there's 3 different examples that you can look at of prominent organizations that can help you figure out how to do that. One local port system that is experimenting with that is Owensboro. And Brittany Johnson, we had a conversation, I guess now maybe a month ago or so. And she runs the president CEO of the Greater Owensboro EDC. And Brian Wright brought her to the table and we spoke about it. And she is setting up a CEO roundtable. And it's going to be, I think, a very exciting pilot project that Brian has bought into. So connecting education to the economy. This is how you can do it. This is how it's painless. This is how it produces a great return on investment. The second area is teaming with return on investment driven private infrastructure funds, investment funds. I gave you 4 examples of associations and organizations do that. Most of you probably have not had to deal with or not had the opportunity to deal with pension funds or sovereign funds or organizations that have a social conscience, but are very, very keen to build out ports, to build bridges, to build infrastructure. The last major bridge across the Ohio River was a partnership of that kind. But this is a painless way for you as port directors and you as state officials to look at and talk to these 3 or 4 different organizations, find out what to do, what not to do, how to backstop it, find out what strengthens your application, how long does it take, but to get a good feel for if you want commitments, how do you do them, how do you structure them? That's critically important because in these federal applications that are coming due, they want speed. They want to know that there is something that's going to happen fairly quick. And this would be a way to stamp in place something that says, yes, we've leveraged $30 million and this is how we're going to do it. And this is how we're going to leverage the federal funds. The third area is an obvious one. We talked about this at the second summit, and that is, I believe that every inland port, every port in the system should have an innovation hub. The economic cabinet has, and the governor has set up these this innovation hub system to drive the creation of talent, to create venture capital, to expand technology. 2 of the ports have that. It's not just a marketing ploy, although I think it would be great in Mimi's plan if every port system, every port in the system had a innovation hub with university partners, investors, technology people, logistics people. I think that would strengthen the image as well as create new prosperity engines for the port. And lastly, real estate. You know, it is in the $200 million shortfall that there's, I think, $53 million is being asked for buying industrial property to expand the ports. That, of course, is critically important. You got to figure out how to do it. But sometimes it is better to have a partner. And some of you already have teamed up with the local governments, with the cities and the counties. And this is one thing that is critical to sharing costs, sharing risk, but also doing it in such a way that it's beneficial. You can sign the deal, and then it's part of the application where you can say, we're ready. We've got this organized. Now, each one of these, and that one has connections, so you can tap onto those links on all 4 of these, and it will make it easier for you to have dialogue with your board of directors and local governments. So anyway, these are potential partners that can help you strengthen the application and strengthen the state's application. Then go to the next one, please. Okay, so there are 5 questions I think every port director needs to ask themselves, but also then have these conversations, this toolkit of questions to ask with local decision makers, with your boards, with the local folks. To, if you've got this covered, that's great. If you don't, make sure that you address these. I think it'll strengthen the ports as catalysts for the economy. The first one is, do you have a plan to team up with your city and county to build and share tax profits on development of industrial, office, mixed-use employment centers near the river and in its import environments? The reason for that is, of course, it's a compelling story to tell federal funders and private investments, but the governments who you're working with, it'll benefit from their citizens because it reduces their commute costs, increase local family disposable income, lessens pollutions, congestion, fosters small business, quality of life, but it benefits the ports and the cities because you get new tax revenues. Anybody who knows anything about tax incremental finance districts, TIFs, community improvement districts, business improvement districts, et cetera, is that they produce their own revenue to pay for infrastructure. So it's a huge benefit if the ports do not have to continually invest in these areas, if the money is produced that covers those costs. The second area is, do you have a cooperative agreement with your city or county to provide property and tax incentives for the companies you're trying to recruit? If you're just winging it, if it's just a process for, whatever the Chamber of Commerce or whatever the EDC or whoever comes first, then that works sometimes. But I think it's very critical to stake a claim for the kind of cluster industries that you want recruited based upon the business intelligence that you now receive, so that it's prioritized and so that you can argue with the feds that you've got this strategy that is in place and that the whole team is pulling forward in each one of the ports. So go to the next questions. So question 3 is, are you connecting education to your economy? I've touched on this as an equity issue, but as a return on investment issue as well. Like what we're seeing evolve in several of the communities, Paducah's got a pretty cool program with the chaplain doing training people to be yacht captains and boat captains. And you see in Owensboro, the CEO roundtable. This needs to be ingrained in every port system, that the CEOs are meeting on an annual basis, maybe convened at the port, but you're talking about the business intelligence and you're talking with the educational folks to see, do we need to look at the curriculum? Owensboro, Brian just, he called yesterday and said they have a new partnership with the community college. This needs to be documented in the marketing plans that you've just heard are starting to evolve. And it needs to be part of building these coalitions. They're not hard to do. There's federal agencies, there's state agencies, there's local people doing it, but be a catalyst for that as a port and create the talent pool, create the business return on investment. Number 4, it's just another question that I think is very valuable to have asked to your business leaders, to your community, to your board of directors, to local elected officials. Do you have a formal relationship with education? Are you able to be a leader in equity? I call them Einstein projects because there's net benefits to eliminating the pipeline of youth into poverty, because it reduces government costs and reduce the demand on taxes in 5 different areas: housing, police, etc. But more importantly, perhaps for the port, is you can argue persuasively that this strategy, this partnership you have with education, is producing a talent base that is the envy of the companies you're trying to recruit. I know from my experience in Austin, Texas, that was the human capital was the deciding factor. People wanted to know that there was a talent pool there, and it was successful in recruiting 22 pretty strong companies. Go to the last toolkit of questions, I think. So adult workforce connectivity. I don't think that it's any mystery that the agencies in Kentucky are all about getting everybody employed and beefing up the talent pool for adults. So it's very expensive to train adults. It's easier to train youth, but these are, if you're not connected to these 4 or 5 programs, I think every port director needs to do that, and they need to put it in their marketing strategy. They need to do it, live it, but also put it in their marketing strategy. Of course, the Kentucky Department of Education has got 2 initiatives, a new vision for Kentucky youth and innovation districts that they will put in every single county in the state. And so it would be very strong argument and make it easy for you as port directors to have that contained in your portfolio. The Kentucky Department of Agriculture, I think they may be on the phone as well. But they have partnerships with manufacturing. So I think it's incredibly important to educate entrepreneurs about how valuable it is to be the headquarters for manufacturing in Kentucky, that they learned that in Kentucky, you can set up your own manufacturing companies. You can start small, you can grow trade, you can become multinational, but there is somebody that will walk you through that whole process. And I think that's very important, especially for the rural ports, but for all the ports. The Kentucky Transportation Cabinet has scholarship programs for engineers. It's absolutely mandatory that every port be tapped into that. Now, maybe you are, and if you are, you know, there's no apologies. You're just smart and you're ahead of the game. But I think it's critically important that the ports step up, if they haven't done it, and generate the enthusiasm in the community that you're the pipeline for engineers through the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And last but not least, the Cabinet for Economic Development has a number of initiatives. The one that jumped out at me was the Bluegrass State Skills Corporation, which has already trained 18,300 Kentuckians so far, I think, this year. And in these cluster industries, which you can on the bottom, you can compare to the business intelligence analysis that you've got. And again, that should be in your marketing strategy. But these groups of technical assistance providers for adult workforce connectivity should all be part of your portfolio and be argued persuasively to the companies you're trying to recruit and grow, and in the federal application. I think then the last slide is Kentucky Innovation, the innovation hubs. And at the last summit, you heard from Anthony Ellis, who is running the state system and has got an incredible team in the economic cabinet. This is why you should do it. They're in 2 ports, but this last paragraph, attract investment, new revenues, grow talent from underutilized assets. It's the state's approach to building vibrant regional innovation clusters and across the state and the overall economy. It modernizes entrepreneurship. It's everything that the ports want to do. It's just an added benefit of having it there. You don't necessarily have to pay for it. All you have to do is create an alliance with your local entrepreneurs and businesses, and then you have a built-in logistics accelerator. So I think then the concluding slide, I'd like to have a special thanks to some of the really great people who were on this phone call and from Kentucky over the last month or so that have contributed to these ideas on how to make Kentucky's application for these federal dollars more competitive, but more importantly, how to make Kentucky resilient and future-proofed. And just remember, I think every single one of these persons was very, very moved by the elimination of poverty, that didn't believe that poverty was inevitable, and felt that as port directors and as business leaders, it is a strong argument that we're all doing our part, but it also is a compelling case for return on investment that is going to, I think, guarantee the success of attracting large sums of money. I don't know if it's the 200 and 20 million, but I think it is doable. And I see somebody is changing Greg's, my spelling on Greg. So Greg, my apology. But thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mimi. I'm hopeful that this has given you some ideas of how to customize your applications, but also your marketing strategy, so that you can build a case for together being the most competitive state in America that goes after these sums of infrastructure dollars. So if you can do that, and you can resolve equity issues, build innovation in Kentucky, and transform the ports into catalytic engines for prosperity that are real 21st century, then I think you have succeeded. So that's it. I went on a little long, Mimi. So my apologies.
It's all good, Kevin. Thank you so much. That was great information. And I know that I think Jimmy's coming back on as well. The links that Kevin had in his presentation obviously will be available to all of you. I believe we've put a lot of them in the chat, but all of you can tap into that information. I'll let Jimmy take over as our host with the most.
Thank you, Mimi, and definitely thank you, Kevin, both of you, for your presentations on some of the things that we really wanted to get across to all the stakeholders, to the ports. Kevin, in case there's some questions, stay with us for a couple of minutes more, but because I think that some of the things you presented and that Mimi's showing that we're going to deliver, and by the way, everything that has been presented, it will be available on the website following the summit, so you can tap back in as well, rewatch these videos or go in and be able to go to these slides and get the hyperlinks. But we're also going to be tying all this into the written report and the summary report, and providing these, obviously, the marketing toolkit action items and the summary items that were presented here today, and want to know, from the stakeholders that are on the call today, do you have any questions? Is there any thoughts or recommendations that you have as we're wrapping up? I mean, we have essentially another month that we are in the final production throes of this, putting the final touches on. You can see the high level of graphics that Razor's providing, and the information that they're providing. You can see that the high level of thought that's been provided to you from the team the past 2 days, and we really want to deliver for all the stakeholders. This is the opportunity for all the stakeholders to kind of say, how can we as a group interested in the waterway system in Kentucky and the overall transportation network in Kentucky, how can we make this a better multimodal system? How can we innovate and elevate the ports as a key mode, as a key component in that system, providing, like Kevin says, innovation, providing jobs, opportunities for your children, grandchildren, to have a future in the cities and counties that you love and in the state that you love. And that's what I think a lot of us are here for. I mentioned that in one of my presentations in the past summit. We're here because we care. We care about our cities. We care about our counties. We care about the things that we do on a daily basis that matter. And we just happen to work in the transportation and freight arenas. And those are touch lives every day. They supply needs, they supply commodities, they provide jobs, high paying, high skilled jobs. And so they affect families and they affect industries, and they affect the economy of not only your communities, but the state and the nation. So we really want to deliver a high quality product that is implementable and useful. So I want to give you a couple minutes to chime in or ask a couple questions if you want of the two panelists. And I don't see it in the chat here. We have one to Kevin here. It says, this is from Scott. it says, Mr. Johns, to what degree is there added value to cross-border outreach, collaboration, regionalization, and formalized work together to attract federal investments? So I think he's talking about, multi-state application type processes.
I think there's incredible opportunities to do that. I think both sides of the river, upstream, downstream, I think that money loves company. And I think any of the port directors or the state officials who are on the line can pull together cooperation from teaming partners, either in other states or, through the Riverport Alliance. I think that makes an incredibly compelling argument for more money. I think it is possible to get $200 million. And I think it's, there's going to be a lot of places that are going to be putting together proposals that are weak and they'll get the minimum amount of dollars. But if you have an alliance with other partners in other states, that's impressive. That's impressive. I would encourage you to do that. And if I can help, please let me know. Some of the links are to associations like the infrastructure links, the private sector infrastructure links, are hundreds of states and cities and authorities that have already used public-private partnerships and private investment. So they may be a resource to identify potential partners for the alliance as well. But I think that's a great question, very smart if you can develop a system of allies in other states that support your application jointly.
Yeah, I mean, we have one more question from Greg Pritchett, and he actually put 3 T's in his name on there. So, it kind of lets you off the hook a little bit for misspelling his last name. But anyways, Greg asked, Kevin, you brought some interesting points. Most of us are not thinking about. My question is, how does the state transportation cabinet and the state EDC cabinet develop, educate, and retain these points of educating me and other port directors?
Greg, first of all, I apologize for the last name spelling, but you're the best. And, you've been a genius in spearheading this whole effort to raise the awareness about the value of the ports. And so I just want to recognize you for our conversations as well. I think that the secretaries of transportation, secretaries of economic development, education, agriculture, I think that it is their vision, from what I have seen in writing, that they support building the talent pool in the state, and in particularly would make it available, all of their resources and all of their programs available to transform the ports themselves and the port communities into a generation of logistical Einsteins. I think that from what I've seen and from the remarks I've heard from the two cabinet secretaries, and from what I've seen at the governor's level, it seems to me that this is full speed ahead, and that they want to leverage transportation as a form of very futuristic commerce. And commerce doesn't happen without the talent pool, without educating the people. There is a thrust, as you know, in this country to focus on blue collar jobs. And I think there is a niche for that, of course. But I think when you look at the state of Kentucky and the amount of children in poverty, I think my focus, and I encourage all of the port directors to make it a point to include that in your portfolio, to take advantage of those programs that I outlined, but also to develop partnerships of education with your local CEOs in partnership with the school system. The last thing I'll say is that there will be at least one major application that the Transportation Cabinet will submit to Washington for funding. And there'll be at least one major one. And I would encourage the Transportation Cabinet to include the Department of Education and the Department of and the Economic Cabinet in that application. Embed that in there in such a meaningful way that it is unquestionably the goal of this infrastructure application to funnel resources and investment and tutoring and internships to all of the port communities. And I think that that would make such a compelling argument that we would receive full funding.
Thank you, Kevin. You have another question. Brian Wright asked, Kevin, in regards to innovation hubs, do the ports focus on the skill sets needed for our specific industry, including the private sector on the river, or do we open it up to beyond in transportation?
I think that's a great
beyond
question.
Transportation, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Brian. I think part of the question is, what is transportation? And, you know, what is your vision of the ports? Obviously, there's a lot of trade and entrepreneurship that is required to move in and out of the ports. There is a lot of, of skills and talent that's needed. So I think you have to customize the innovation hubs to fit your current need, but to also create partnerships that would allow that role to be expanded. Like you've set up a new partnership, Brian, with the community college. I think that it would be beneficial to the city and the county, so the mayor and the judges, if an innovation hub that was pioneered or encouraged by the port generated more business for them. If they all of a sudden started getting more entrepreneurs in the city and more entrepreneurs in the county, they would be more apt to be a partner in a real estate development because you're giving them something back. You're doing things for the community that they have an unquestionable, return on investment. So I think start with looking at what's in the business intelligence that you're just receiving. Look at the cluster industries, certainly anything with logistics, sensors, technology, robotics, any of the kind of technology and innovation that you need at the port. I would start there, but then I would also expand that within the community with instructions and ideas from the colleges and the entrepreneurs in the city. Because that's where you're going to grow. That's where you're going to grow entrepreneurs. And then if they use that as their headquarters, those entrepreneurs and startups use that as their headquarters, then they further build out the port. So a long way of saying two-part strategy, kind of like a spread offense. I would tackle it immediately to recruit the innovation hub to the community, to the port, with a focus on what you need now, and you're seeing in the cluster industry analysis, but then also make sure that it's embedded in the college and embedded in the community so they use it as a vehicle.
Thank you, Kevin. There was a comment earlier on the market profiles. They said that it looks really good, Mimi. So that came from Mary. So I second that. They're looking great. I think those are going to be very useful tools for many of the ports and the local EDC representatives, and and even to go to meetings with the leadership throughout the different state agencies that Kevin's describing. These types of tools are things to sit down and explain to those industries. And Kevin, to kind of piggyback, I'm going to ask you a question to piggyback on Brian. Brian, was asking, should we open it up beyond? And my question is, you know, a lot of the things that you describe, you know, bringing in entrepreneurship, bringing in education, to me, you know, where is the best place, you know, if you were to sit down and pretend you were a port director for a day, and some of these ports have mentioned and described that they have very small staffs, you know, some of them larger staffs in the state, you know, 30 employees plus within the actual port authority, and some of them, you know, it may just be the port director and his assistant or something to that effect. If you were to sit down and be one of them for a day, what would be the first thing that you would try to do? And they have relationships with their shippers, with their tenants, you know, with the broader transportation freight community, the logistics community. They already have those relations. But what would be the first thing that you would do? And I've heard a lot of that, but I just want to, you know, kind of sit down and say, you know, are these communities? Do you bring them into the table? Do you go to, you know, your primary tenants and say, hey, I'm setting up this you know, economic development and education hub type thing in the community, and I want you all to be involved in it. How would you do that if you were to be a port director for a day?
Well, I think I would find, I would do a little research and look at the priorities of a port community that's already done it, that was similar in size. So I mentioned what Brian and Brittany are doing, and I was impressed that, you know, they developed, the port director developed an ally, and the ally is doing it, is developing the CEO system. So if I was a port director for a day, which I would really love to do, I would, and I was a solo or had a small staff, I would create a priority list of the allies that I wanted to make. And I would host them to come together and work as a team. So if you're a small community and you need a lot of a small port and you need a lot of real estate, I would prioritize working with the mayor and the judge and the CEOs to say, how can we partner on this? And then I would have on the agenda, how can we work on the equity issue? You know, this is the issue of our time. This is, you know, dealing with equity and poverty. You know, you cannot not see that it's dragging part of America down. And so I think every individual, every port director, no matter what kind of staff they have the potential to be a voice and a leader. And sometimes that's all it takes to develop allies. And once you develop allies, you can delegate, or you can support other people's ideas. The innovation hub is apparently the governor's idea. So support that and ask for one. You know, if you're doing, there's great programs. I put on the list on connecting education to the economy, Junior Achievement, Genesis, the IBM school. They want to do it. They would be great partners for a port director. Maybe it doesn't work in all of them, but there are resources to develop allies. Would you just need to talk to your board? I would talk to my board. I'd talk to the mayor. I would develop a priority system, not more than one or two things, and then find out who's doing it and see if you can develop it as an ally. I hope that helps.
Certainly, yeah, I appreciate that. And you know, that was more to you know, to cover my interest as far as the question goes. But you know, I think that you know, we have a couple more minutes. If there's any other questions, would love for y'all to put them in the chat while we're here. And just wanted to let y'all know that. Go ahead, Mimi. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing on the port profiles. So I think one of the other things I just want to note is I know that these are all branded very similarly. We wanted to start there with all of you, even though we know you all have very different strengths and unique characteristics that you'll want to promote. And like I said, on that front page, we have those key features on the left side, but having this foundation, you'll start from there. And then this toolkit that we're going to give you will help you figure out how to pull out additional differentiators for your specific port, whether that you use that in talking points as you're selling, as you're talking to partners at the state level and beyond, or if you are wanting to, apply for grants and things like that. So there will be ways to differentiate your port. I just was having some private chat discussions with folks, and I wanted to be able to just highlight that point, that we're not trying to make you all look the same. We're trying to help you have this consistent foundation to start from and then build from there.
That's a really good point, Mimi, and I think this ties both of y'all together. With the last kind of question statement that I have, we have been driving home the collaboration of the port community in Kentucky. And the reason we're doing that is not because we want the ports to all, go along and get along. We understand, as you mentioned in your presentation, that you compete for business, you compete across the river with other states. But the idea is that when you're developing a growth scenario, if the ports are speaking from the same sheet of music collectively on things that you can agree on, things that you can agree all of you need, which is, funding, economic development strategies, these toolkits, the marketing toolkits, and the fact that they all look alike is not a bad thing. It gives consistency for, information to decision makers to quickly go in and see where they know exactly where to look for information on a particular port, like EDC and others. But also that you guys have that approach of collaboration to solve big issues for the state from the Riverport's perspective. And I know that is just one of the key features that we're trying to drive home. And I think that these tools that you're being provided and that will get summed up here in the final report, are good features that will help do that. So I would encourage everybody to dig in to them, to respond in the coming days and weeks to get your information exactly the way that you want to see it. Yeah, we're not planning on changing the look and feel at this point in time, but we're definitely okay with changing information to where it gets right for you and the individual port. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I just want to do a little color commentation. I think you and Mimi are dead on. If I was, the brilliant people in Louisville who managed that incredible mothership of a port, have so much to tell about their successes and their board of directors and their partners. So of course they would want to put that in this package and show some of the unique attributes that they have organically grown in some of their successes. And if I was in, up in the Covington area where Judge Boone is, I'd want to put something in there about Amazon. So, Louisville can do one thing, Covington can do another, Paducah can do another, but to show that all the individual ports have these wonderful attributes that are some of them unique, some of them complementary, but that they're all working towards the same goal. I do like the uniformity of it. But I would certainly have the highlights from every port, the ability to add a dimension of what's happening now, what's going on in each one of these communities. If someone had a breakthrough in shipping hemp, if someone is, cornered the market on bourbon shipbarge shipping, there's a personality that Kentucky can do here that is unique, that makes it stand out as a whole Riverport system that is unique and replicable in other states around the country. And that's what I would encourage people to be creative with this base document that shows you a format and shows you how to capture the 5 elements of marketing, but then I'd customize it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I want to thank Mimi and Kevin for their great presentations. Again, everything will be available on the project website, which is if you just go to the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet's ports website, you can, and all that information is available in the chat to get there. But all this will be made available in the weeks to come, and also be looking forward to the production, the final report, which will be by the end of October. You should have that. So these things are coming so that that you guys can implement them and utilize them. And we will have again a couple more session, or one more session, the closing session, which will be from noon to 1:30, and you don't want to miss that. We have Secretary Gray. He's going to be providing a live presentation on the Riverports, and he's also going to take some time to answer questions that were provided from the port community stakeholders, and really give some give a perspective of his support and thoughts of the Riverport community and economic development as it's related. So thank you again, Kevin. Really appreciate your wisdom and insight, and Mimi, your creative expertise and your wisdom related to getting the marketing package out and getting the message out. We definitely couldn't put this together without experts like the both of you and our other partners, IHS and QK4. And so thank you again. Round of applause, pat on the back, and we're going to go ahead and give everybody back about 7 extra minutes. Please be back sharply at noon for the presentation from Secretary Gray. So have a good afternoon, and thank you again.